Welcome back to Downpipe Restoration, everybody. My name is Chris. This right here is a checklist. It's blank, but trust me, it's going to be a checklist. And if you can read it, what it says is engine start checklist. So if you have been watching my videos, and if not, you can look up here and get to the playlist for it. I have rebuilt the motor on my 1964 Triumph TR4, and now I'm in the process of putting things on to get it running. So hopefully over the next several videos and next several weeks and months of my life, that's what I'm going to be doing. So as I progress, I'm going to get this checklist filled out and check it off, obviously, as I get things done, because that's what a checklist is for. So let's see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Let's get it sorted. So this is no particular order here, but we're going to start off with, I know I need to do the oil system. Coming off the oil pump, you got lines, or not off the oil pump, all the oil filter housing, you got lines and oil lines that come off of that and get all that stuff situated. I've got to do the cooling system. I have a electrical fan that I'm going to be using, a Revitec fan that I'm going to be using, so I got to get that piped in both mechanically with the water lines and electrically to make sure that works when I start the car up. And let's see what else. We've got the fuel system. I have rebuilt these carbs. There's a link to those, a couple videos there. I have Zenith Strombergs with this year of this commission number of the TR4s. It came with both SUs and Strombergs. Mine particularly came with Strombergs, so I've got those rebuilt. I got to get those back on. Manifolds. So intake and exhaust manifolds, get those all nice and pretty. I've actually already done that, and they're sitting there over on the over the block. I'll show you a quick little video on those, which you can get over here. Next up is the exhaust system. So now I have the exhaust system that came with the car originally. I may or may not replace it, or may or may not replace portions of it, but for now I'm not going to do anything with it. I don't really care right now. It's not like I'm going to drive it around. I'm just getting it so I don't hurt myself with the sound going when I start the motor up. And then the starting system. So I have a gear reduction starter that I picked up from BritishStarters.com, I think it is. So that's easy. You can just bolt that up. And then obviously there's going to be a lot more stuff going on here. No particular order. This isn't necessarily how I'm going to approach it. This checklist may branch off into other things as I move along. And I may start with one thing, jump to the other thing, come back and all that kind of stuff. But this is kind of off the top of my head here, the big things. I did not download a checklist from a website or a rebuild shop or anything like that. I am completely winging it, using my one piece of experience that I have when I did my Triumph Spitfire. And actually there, you can watch that video up there too. That's an old one. And so we'll move forward with going down that path. First things I'm going to do is get the starter in, because that's really easy. I'll show you the manifolds and the kind of the cooling and all the stuff that goes in with that. That gets a little bit of a sandwich, all the stuff that kind of has to go together. And then, so we'll do the starting system, and then we'll look at the cooling system and how that's going to set up, and we'll move on from there. So let's go over to the motor and see what we're looking at. So over at the motor, obviously, I've got the steering rack that I just recently rebuilt. Got the video on that if you want to care to watch that. It's just sitting here. The installation of this is an adventure all by itself. I'm not ready to do that yet. Real quick though, I've got to torque down the crankshaft pulley. I haven't done that yet. You might notice that the pulleys here are kind of a aluminum or a real shiny color. I did get the narrow belt kit that you can pick up at any of your favorite suppliers. This one I think I got at Rimmer's. And obviously that bolt needs to be torqued. Everything needs to be torqued, really. The water pump and everything, all those pulleys. I didn't probably really need to go to the narrow belt kit, but I decided to when I went to the alternator, so that's part of it. And I ended up getting my own size belt, not the ones that comes with the kit, and I essentially ended up buying a handful of them and just finding one that worked, just to get the tension right for where the alternator sat and all that kind of stuff. So that's all sorted and everything like that. If you're going to go that route, I'd recommend you kind of figure it out yourself instead of trusting anything that I've done, because I think it might be slightly different for everybody. Anyway, I've got right now just a piece of metal stock bolted to the back of the gearbox, and it kind of sticks out. It's just a bar. And as I'm going to torque on this bolt here, that bar is going to hit the frame and hopefully give me enough resistance to allow me to torque this bolt. The workshop manual calls for a torque something like 90 foot-pounds or something like that. A couple things that the kit comes with is instructions, and it tells you only have to go to 60 foot-pounds, and it gives you a couple of reasons for that. One, you don't have a fan that's going to be riding on the front of this, and you also don't have the extra thickness of the belt increasing that resistance and everything like that. So you only have to go to 60 foot-pounds if you're using the narrow belt kit. So I will hopefully be able to torque this down to 60 foot-pounds with the bar stock that I'm using. The motor mounts and the transmission mounts are still not completely tight, so everything kind of flexes a little bit, but I think 60 foot-pounds will be able to get that. So I got my big old handy-dandy half-inch torque wrench here. I got 60 foot-pounds dialed up on it. So let's see if this doesn't give me any grief here. But I think I might have the wrong size socket. Yes, I do. I'll be right back. All right, 7/8 for this. So we're just gonna go ahead and get on it. All right, so that's 7/8. Everything held up, that's good. I'm not gonna worry about the other pulleys right now because I just don't have the belt connected and everything like that. So now we will move on. I'll show you the manifold and kind of the soup sandwich that goes to the manifold, and then we'll move on from there. Another easy thing to do here, though, I have to get on the floor. This is the cover plate that goes between the gearbox and the engine. For whatever reason, the housing on the engine doesn't go all the way down. So when you bolt it up, you've got this big gaping hole in the bottom of the gearbox. So all this does is just kind of fit up against. There's no gasket or anything here. It's just, I guess, small rodents and animals and everything that you may encounter on the road. I guess it prevents them from crawling into your gearbox. But it's just 4 5/16 bolts, and just bolts it right up to the gearbox itself, the housing, the bell housing on the gearbox. So we're going to go ahead and put that on real quick. Not going to be able to show you because it's, like I said, it's on the floor, but nothing to that. Just like I said, 4 bolts. For those of you that might have been screaming at me that you can't put that plate on with the transmission, a little bit louder next time. So I did have to kind of separate the motor and the gearbox from each other just a little bit, just to stick those bolts in because it was getting bound up for the 2 lower ones behind the oil pan, but I was able to get it and not really have to do a whole bunch of extra rework. The workshop manual calls for, or the parts catalog calls for 3/4, 1 inch, or 1 1/4 inch bolts, but doesn't really tell you to use them in various locations or whatever. It's kind of odd. So I just use 1 1/4 inch. A couple of them are a bit too long. Probably could have used an inch long ones there, but I'm not gonna worry about it. So moving on to something else. First thing I'm gonna work on is the cooling circuit and the bunch of hoses, obviously, and stuff like that, and the pipe for the heater. But I showed you in the manifold video that I had a black pipe. Well, I picked up a stainless steel one from British Parts Northwest. They were having a Black Friday 15% off sale, and I had some concern for that other pipe because it uses an olive nut down here, and that pipe was pretty well crimped and everything, and I was just afraid I have a little bit of a leak on the same design on my Spitfire, and I was just concerned that it wouldn't work. Unfortunately, this pipe doesn't fit. So it goes from this fitting right here, which I got new ones of these two that are silver. I'm gonna swap them out. But it goes around, so it sticks in here like so, and seats, and that's where the olive nut is. And then on this camera over here, it's gonna come in, and there's a stud right here in the back where the lifting eye goes and everything like that. And I think you can pretty clearly see that that needs to go that way. Oh, quite a bit, almost 1 inch, I would say. So, and I'm pretty sure, pretty confident that that's bottomed out there. So that's obviously a bit concerning. I don't have a pipe cutter that can do stainless without at least having some concern, because stainless is pretty hard, that I'm going to damage it and ruin it. So I'm going to have to cut this with a just a regular, bench grinder with a cutting wheel on it. And I'm not really opposed to that. These things aren't that cheap. It's 40, 50 bucks. But if I even line up against with the same spot in the turn here, I think you can see that this pipe is a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is line it up with the original black pipe first and cut it to that, and then kind of go from there. So we'll get over to the bench. I'll cut that excess off here real quick. I'm going to also swap out this nut in here, and then we'll see if I can get this thing fit up. Problem number 2, if you can see this is all nice and smoothed off a little bit, and this is a hard square, a hard edge, And what's happening is one of these is now smacking into the side of the manifold, exhaust manifold, so it won't fit in. So I've cut the pipe to length. I think that's proper and about the right length. But now I've got to grind this down to make it look more like this guy. So what I'm going to do is just take a piece of tape, tape it over top of this, then cut it to fit, and then transfer the tape over. The holes line up, the pipe distance from where the holes are, all that kind of stuff. You might not be able to see real well on the camera because I'm not real steady, but trust me when I say that that seems to be correct that way. But obviously I'm going to be feeding back to British Parts Northwest just to let them know and take some pictures here, but we'll see. I think you can see on the tape there where I have to peel away. I'm not going to worry about this up here. I'm not going to make it skinnier, you know, this way, but I am going to round those corners off, and hopefully that'll be good enough to get out of the way of the manifold. Obviously take a little bit of the side off too, so frustrating. Well, I got it. Much harder than it needed to be, I think. And the lifting eye is on the inside. I'm not sure that's the way it's supposed to be, but that's the way I've got it. I really couldn't find a good picture that shows the orientation of those. And I had to put the stud in after getting all that stuff fit up. So again, I'm not sure, but I don't know really another way to do it. So now I will take it all back apart, go over and do the new bolt that goes into the water pump housing, get that with the that PTFE stuff that I like to use, that white stuff what I use for water jackets and stuff like that. And then we'll get this pipe in here. And then I think we'll get the manifolds on at least and get them tightened down. And I did get the, in my video, I didn't have the studs that went here from the intake manifold. All I did was buy some threaded rod. This is not a critical stud here, so I wasn't too concerned. So I just got a threaded rod and cut it to fit. It was cheap and easy. So now we will go ahead, take this all back apart. Obviously, I got to clean up my seating surfaces, get some copper gasket spray on there, get those gaskets on there, and then get some manifolds on. Gonna go with the manifolds next. And what you see here is an abundance of hardware to attach both the intake and the exhaust. Kind of went through a little bit of this, trying to get that silly cooling pipe on. So you've got a bunch of studs, obviously, and they, you know, as Triumph often does, the 4 across the top. This is the way it would be arranged on the head. So these would be the upper holes in the head, and these would be the lower holes. 4 across the top are all the same size. Unfortunately, the workshop manual gives you a nice picture of how everything kind of lays out there, so it's kind of obvious what goes where. But the 4 across the top are all the same size. They're 2 1/16. And then the 2 bottom in the middle are the same size, and those are, let me see here, 2 3/8. And then you got some oddballs. You got one that is the number 6 here, the 6th on the thing, that's 1 11/16. And then number 2 here, that's where the that lifting eye and that cooling pipe gets attached to. That guy there is 1 15/16. So they're all different. So you got to keep track of that. And then the workshop manual gives you another picture here where it tells you and kind of shows you how everything bolts up. So what I'm going to do next is treat the gaskets with some copper stuff. I had a small exhaust leak on the Spitfire, and I used some copper like spray gasket stuff, and it worked pretty well for exhaust. So we're going to spray that stuff down, get that on the gaskets for the exhaust, let that kind of set up a little bit, and then go ahead and start getting everything fit up. So what I'm going to do, because of the issues that I had getting that pipe and the lifting eye fitted, is I'm going to leave this stud out and just not worry about it, and then put it in when everything is kind of lined up. One other thing I will point out is these little, I don't even know what they're properly called. Let's see what the workshop manual calls those. It calls those bridge clamp securing manifold. So these bridge clamps here, obviously you've got 3 of one kind and 2 of the other, and it's pretty obvious when you get over there what kind of goes where, and I'll show you that when we get there. One last thing here, these 2 little bolts and the lock washers, that's for the connection between the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold that I had mentioned. I just put some threaded rod, there you go. So we'll have to get all that, and that needs to be in there. Those threaded rods or your studs should be in there before you put it on, because it's all got to kind of sandwich together and then slide on. So let's get over to the car and see how this all fits up.
All right, so we got the copper covered gaskets. Now the gaskets are identical, but they go in opposite directions, kind of a mirror image. All right, so there's those, and like I said, I'm gonna leave this one out because I'm gonna put that at the end for this pipe and everything. And also with the pipe, it's all gotta kind of go on in one shot. So I need to get the olive nut on here and the other nut and get ready to actually put it in here. So let's get that set up. So this nut is what goes into the water pump housing, so that goes on first. And then the olive nut goes on there, like so. And then that, as you tighten, it's just like a plumbing fitting, right? It's nothing special here. As that tightens down, that'll get compressed a little bit. I'm also gonna put some PTFE on these threads here. So that's ready to go. Do that. So I've got the pipe here as seated that way into the holder as I can, and then as that as it gets all fitted and finalized and all that, then I'll come back in and tighten that guy up. So I got a little bit of a time crunch here. I probably should have waited on that PTFE just so it doesn't start curing on me. But let's now go around and do the manifolds. So like I mentioned, you got the threaded rods under here. Again, I'm not real concerned with them being you know, bearing this. This is not a stud per se for you. We're holding pressure or anything like that. It's just a convenient way to get everything kind of fit up. So we'll go ahead and put the exhaust manifold on first. And I got the seating surface all cleaned up. We're just going to kind of set it up here. And again, you've got one hole here, and I don't have the other hole or the other stud in because I'm coming in with the that stud last, and then we'll do the exhaust or the intake manifold, and that gets kind of held on with just studs that are in the head. So we'll get these all lined up like so. And I'm going to now real quick, before I lose control here, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these nuts on the bottom so that I get this kind of thing sandwiched together. And this just calls for a flat washer and a lock washer, or I mean, and the bolt. All right, get a wrench. So they're kind of sandwiched together now, and I know you probably couldn't see too much of that. So now that that's good, next up is going to be to get this pipe out of the way, because the pipe's got to go on the other side. So obviously not doing that one yet. And now we'll go ahead and start to do all of the bolts and nuts. So these little guys, and I'll try to show you as I go. Like I said, it's kind of obvious. So the exhaust manifold and the intake manifolds right here are very close together. So I don't need to span a lot. So that'll take care of that. That one will go here. This one can go here. This one can go here. This one here doesn't need one. It's the ones down at the bottom here where you've got a span to take care of. So we'll go ahead and push this kind of up here and start getting these tight. Let me see if I can get you a little bit better of an angle here. So there's the top. You can see how they fit. And we're just going to go ahead and snug those down. And in the bottom, that guy right there doesn't really need one. But these guys under in here, you can see there's quite a distance in between everything. So that'll get a large clamper. If you can see that, how that kind of goes. And then you obviously got another one over here. That'll get a large clamp. Goes like that. So I'll get my hand in there, get it tightened up. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you very well. And then we'll come over here and do this last one. So I got 2 extra of these guys, and I think that's okay, because on the edges here, you don't need one, obviously, because there's nothing to clamp to besides the manifold itself. And none of this stuff was on here when I got the car. It was all taken off already. I don't know what they were in the middle of when I purchased it, but so they may have been extras or something like that, but there's no place else to put them. That's for sure. There's no other studs. So if you know how I'm screwing that up, please point it out, but I think I'm okay. All right, so now we've got this last stud to put on here, and like I mentioned, we're not going to do it until we get the pipe in. So we'll get that pipe set up here. And that's on this side. And then we also have to get the lifting eye. So kind of a real pain in the rear here, everything that goes together. So that it's not clear to me, so that our ARP stud kit comes with flat washers on everything. It's not clear to me if this needs the flat washers, but I'm gonna, with this, if this will act as the flat washer or not. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it on. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on top and just kind of deal with it. The thread protrusion is enough that I've got at least a couple threads hanging out. So I'm not worried about the thread protrusion on the stud. And then we're gonna come in with the pipe here. And I think the pipe goes in between the lifting eye and the stud here. Gotta get that. And I'll do this again so you have a better angle. So put the lifting eye down. It's giving me a little bit of grief here. All right, so I got the stud started definitely. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a bolt off of another one and use kind of like the 2-bolt method here to make sure that I've got that stud in there. Well, it's going, but I'm running out of bolt space. All right, let's cinch it up a little bit more, hopefully. All right, now the stud has stopped turning, which is good. Just made it. Put this other nut back. Get the lock washer under this guy, and that should be sorted. All right, put the head stud back on, the head bolt and flat washer back on. And I got to torque that down, don't forget. So I'm going to run over to the other side and tighten up the gland nut on that piece of pipe. All right, so this is a 7/8 inch nut here, and pretty much all you're doing is just tightening it down. I meant to hit record and missed it, but it's just me tightening a bolt. And essentially that's compressing that olive nut into this fitting here. And now that should be sorted. This pipe is not touching the head anywhere. It's not interfering with anything. So that's all good. And there you go. So I'm gonna go ahead and torque that one head stud bolt down that was loosened, and we'll call the manifolds in. Forgot to torque the manifold head bolts, so they are 22 to 24, and I'll do 23 foot-pounds. So we'll get all those real quick. And I'm gonna kind of do it in a, bring them up to torque on alternating kind of thing here, just to make sure the thing's going on flat. And also checking as I go to make sure that any of these clamps are still clamped where they're supposed to be, because obviously as you turn it, the friction will tend to turn the clamp a little bit, so you want to make sure that they haven't shifted anywhere. Some of them will hit the manifold and will not allow it to go anywhere, but some of them will not. And the little guys underneath are 13 foot-pounds. Not much, obviously. So there's that. So obviously I still got tape covered here. I'll leave that there. Carburetors will obviously be next. But I think real quick, I'm going to just kind of rough fit the exhaust, because I just kind of want to see how that goes. And then we're going to put the starter in, and I think that'll wrap it up for this video. So as I mentioned, I may or may not get new exhaust pipe stuff. This is, at least according to the sticker on one of the mufflers, this is stainless steel. It looks like it's not rusty at all, and it definitely has had the opportunity to rust, just sitting in the barn here. So I cleaned it up a little bit, not too much. Cleaned up that seating surface there that some of the pipe had stuck through. So this is definitely not original to the car. Unfortunately, a piece of the muffler is got a hole in it, or the pipe coming out of one of the intermediate mufflers got a hole in it, which I find kind of surprising, but so be it. So we'll definitely be getting some pieces parts. Get this gasket in here. Hold on. All right, so that goes like that. And then this downpipe here, I think it's the same for the TR6, goes and heads towards the back, obviously, and into the cross, the center of the X for the frame there, but it doesn't quite go through it. The intermediate muffler pipe comes in and goes through, but it's relatively close. Obviously, I'm not going to have a pipe hanger for this yet, so we're just going to bolt it up. I'm not sure if this one, I haven't looked close, I'm not sure if this one gets a pipe hanger or not anywhere. But hopefully this will go on. Fighting me. All right, so either I've got a crooked stud here or something. Let me see if I get this figured out. Hold on. As I mentioned, I picked up a aftermarket gear reduction starter from BritishStarters.com. I don't know what kind of reputation they have, frankly, but I don't think they rebuilt them. You can see that sticker. There's another adhesive there. My guess is they probably just relabel them and sell them. So this is probably a Japanese starter. I don't know, there's not any markings on it or anything, but it looks to be in halfway decent shape. And I did not test it, but I'm not that worried about it. I believe the original starters have a spacer, and because of this adapter plate here, that takes the place of the spacer. So you won't need to worry about putting a spacer on it. So we're gonna go ahead and you can see here how it kind of flies out when it goes. And I've already kind of put this up before I put the gearbox on. I put this up and just kind of took a look and make sure that it lined up and it looks fine to me. So this is a 3/8 inch bolt, lock washer, flat washer, all that kind of good stuff. And it's not really that difficult to put in. It's kind of hard to screw this one up. And also, depending, if you read the workshop manual, I believe it has accommodations for different size spacers that you might be able to put in there on the original starters. So it calls out different size bolts to use. And I think I ended up with 2 1/4 here for this one. So I'll get a set of wrenches here and just kind of tighten this up real quick. This little wire here, and what that does is it goes down here and it will allow you to override or not override, depending on how you want to, the built-in solenoid for the starter. So if you want to still use the one that's up in the engine bay, higher up, like on the firewall, this jumper wire allows you to do that or not do that. And those solenoids on the firewall are convenient because they got a little push button built into them. At least some of the ones you can get. So you can kind of remote start the car from the engine bay. You don't have to worry about doing it from the key or anything like that. I use that quite a bit. So I can't remember if the wire is connected to override it or not connected to override it. I don't remember. But either way, I gave myself the option there. So we'll go ahead and tighten this up and I'll wrap up the video. Not going to check off starting system yet because just because the starter's installed doesn't mean the starting system works. So we'll leave that unchecked for now. But one down. All right, everybody, that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. The driving season's over. That's what I think. Anyway, a lot of good work today. So thanks so much for watching on the journey to getting this motor running. And hopefully we'll get some more stuff accomplished in the next video. So thanks again. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.